Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson. And Ish, how was your experience at the Shrine Bowl yesterday?
It was good. It's kind of a loose event, for better and worse.
I hear you
But
got to meet. I hear you got to meet your hero,
Eddie
Ish.
George, yeah, that
That's all
was
right.
pretty cool. So him and Andrew Whitworth got put into the Shrine Bowl Hall of Fame. I believe last year was Steve Sarkisian and somebody else I can't remember. But so they did a banquet the day before at Globe Life, and I thought about going to it because they had availability, and I was like, no, I don't want to drive over there because I just wanted to meet Eddie George, and I was like, I don't want to do that. He might be at the game, and sure enough, he was. They presented him kind of in like the middle of the first, and then like second quarters.
Yeah.
And that was cool. It was cool. I got to talk to him for a little bit. He was a little under the weather, but he was really, really awesome. Growing up, if I know Eddie George is a little bit past people's times, probably of like, I guess that kind of puts me in the old head category because
Yes, it does.
he's like of an era of running back that like it's not LaDainian Tomlinson, it's not like a surefire Hall of Famer, but like I forget how huge Eddie George was, like physically.
Yeah.
Like I walked up to him and I was like, "Oh right, he's like 6'4". Like he's like one of the tallest running backs ever. I was standing next to Carter, who's our staff writer, and he looked over and he's like, oh my god, he's like, because Carter's like he's 6'6", 6'1", and he looked over, he's like, that's a running back. Like I was like, yeah, he was 6'4", 230. Like it was. They literally don't make those guys anymore. Like Derrick Henry's not 6'4",
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was awesome because like, yeah, that's basically the reason why I'm into football. Him and Steve McNair and those Titans teams are why I'm kind of glued to that death ride of a franchise.
Yeah. Tighten up. There you go. Number one pick. It's coming in.
It was cool. It was cool. Like the game itself was okay. The East team kind of sandbagged the West team. They won, I think, 25-0. But some of the Texas players we were there to watch had some good showings. Elijah Roberts. There was a lot of, understandably, a lot of Colorado fans there. They had like 5 players. Will Shepard at wide receiver. Yeah. Of course, Shiloh I mentioned. Shadur was on the sidelines. Cam Ward was on the side, which I didn't expect to see Cam Ward there, just on the side, just chilling. So that was cool. But yeah, it was a good event. It's always a good event for mostly the sideline stuff because like last year, I think Dion went last year, and so it was like just random things like that, just kind of around. So it was a cool event.
Yeah. On the basketball side,
yep,
we're recording this on Friday morning here, and it's been an interesting week, I think, for conference play in particular. And the game I wanted to start with was Texas Tech men's beating TCU 71-57.
Mm-hmm.
I watched this game later that night on Wednesday, and I feel like my biggest takeaway was I have been sleep on Texas Tech's potential at potentially making a run in this tournament. And I don't know why I went over Texas Tech sparked this, but like they were doing this without Darian Williams. And I'm like, they don't even have Darian Williams, and they still just look deeper, look bigger, like look more versatile. We'll talk about like Christian Anderson and Kevin Overton coming off the bench. They started Toppin and Federico together. And so that front court is awesome. And I just left that game saying they can win in different ways. They're big. They have a star player. And I think they have versatile enough guards to really keep them in games no matter what, even if one or two aren't clicking. And so I'm like, what else do I need to see? And then you go on KenPom and they're 12th in offense, 31st in defense. That's plenty good for me. So yeah. I left this game saying, all right, I've been sleeping on Texas Tech, and we talked about the non-conference, how it wasn't all that. But now at this point, they've won 5 in a row, and they play Houston on Saturday.
Yeah, that's going to be a massive test. And I don't want it to seem like, if they go out and lose by 10, 15, like I don't want to, or 15 to 20, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it was all, smoke screen or whatever. Like this is a good team. I genuinely think, because I also genuinely think, that this TCU team is a pretty good team. And so like, I think that it's a rebuilding team, but I think it's a pretty good team still, regardless. And Tech controlled it basically the entire time. That's what kind of makes me more impressed with it, is that you look at what they were able to do, and JT Toppin had a JT Toppin game, right? He wasn't spectacular, but he was just that. It was that type of game where you realize they have no one on the other side that can guard him, right? He's going to get his, but also he's not going to be. They're not going to rely solely on him, right? Chance McMillan's going to be able to get his. Elijah Hawkins be able to set up the offense very easily. Kerwin Walton, right? And I think like this was the Tech team that I hope to see, where like you just saw everything on paper, and you're just like, if this just falls into place, if that just falls into place, and the key is JT Toppin, right? And if he's going, like everything else falls into place. But like I think we've seen as the season's gone along, and especially that A&M game where he missed, like they're not a team that's solely reliant on him because of how well they work everything together.
Yeah. I know we've talked about Federico. His play, I think, has been one of like the improvements he's made throughout the year. You could tell early in the year, Grant was kind of hesitant. They plugged him in when Toppin was out, and it was like, okay, kind of feeling him out. And now they're just rolling with Federico as being like a real mainstay for this team. You look at early in the season, the minutes per game. Yeah, the first was this 8 games of the year, he didn't play over 15, 18 minutes. And now he's routinely, 25, 24 plus, and then started, like I said, against TCU for the first time since Oral Roberts. So that's a 1-2 punch in the front court. TCU did not have answers for.
I was about to say that's a game changer.
Now,
like
Houston might have answers for it, but 95% of teams out there, I don't think have answers for it.
Right. And like that's a game changer because Elijah Hawkins is a smaller guard. And so but he's the only probably undersized player on this team. Everybody else is either you have the size advantage like in the front court, or they're of, adequate size for their position, like Chance McMillan, right? So like that gives you the ability to maybe, you can sacrifice a little bit of size with Elijah Hawkins in the backcourt because they know like, okay, if he gets bullied on the other end, like they're running into JT Toppin and Federico. So it's like, good luck, go have fun with that. And then also like the continuing emergence of Christian Anderson, right? He's continuing just to be that first guard off the bench, right? He's basically their sixth man now, and you can take Elijah Hawkins off the floor a little bit, or you can play him with Elijah Hawkins with Chance McMillan and have him take over a little bit of the playmaking or just the lead guard position. Because after that breakout performance against Iowa State, where he had 18 points, he's at 8, 10, 18, 9, and 8, right? He's just a reliable. And the fact that he can go for those double-digit scores off the bench every once in a while just shows how gifted he is. But at the very least, you have a guy who's going to give you 7 to 10 off the bench. Like that is something that this team desperately needed, because I didn't know who their backup guard was going to be. And we looked at I think in the beginning of the year, we looked at their starting lineup. We're like, oh yeah, that starting lineup's awesome. And it was like, okay, what's on the bench? And him emerging. I mean, you talk about another guard, freshman guard at Baylor, who's also emerging at the same time. Like they've come at the right time because they need these type of depth plays when you go against the Houstons who have, 8 or 9 that they can throw at you.
Yeah. Christian Anderson, 41.2% from 3 on the year. Even better in conference play, 44.7% in conference in 9 games. Like I said, Texas Tech versus Houston. In Houston,
we'll see. Houston, like we had these interesting. Obviously, it was a different Tech team last year, but like we were interested with Tech. Where it's like, oh, how good are they? Then Houston just completely ate their lunch. I'm curious to see, like, is this the same results? Same result. I don't think it'll be the same result, but like this does have the feeling. This could have the feeling of interesting Tech team that just isn't up to that standard yet. Maybe.
The problem is it's at home for Houston.
Yeah. It's gonna be a really, really tough game.
I watched Houston beat, like, if you go through their home schedule so far this year, just against, like, let's just say good teams.
Yeah.
They beat Butler, who's 81st in KenPom, 79-51. They beat Troy, who's 109 in KenPom, 62-42. They beat BYU by 31. Like, they beat TCU only by 19. So, then West Virginia only by 16. So, like, that's the scope we have right now. And I mean, I didn't even mention when they beat Utah by 34, 70-36. And so it's like, I don't expect Texas Tech to keep it within 10. But I think Texas Tech can do enough to make it look like, if you watch the game, it's like, okay, these two teams aren't in a different stratosphere. You know what I mean? Like, you watch Houston, you watch Utah, those are two teams in a different stratosphere to me. Tech should be able to play with them a little bit and at least keep it respectable. I think keep it within 20 points and be able to, make some shots to play with. I want to see JT Toppin versus Jawan Roberts or Joseph
I'm
Pugler.
very interested in that.
Like, this is going to be a really, really fun game. So that's what I look forward to tomorrow. What time is it at? That's what I need to see. It is at 6 p.m. Eastern, so 5 o'clock on ESPN2.
Lock in.
On the other side of the Big 12, I stayed up and watched Baylor lose to BYU.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
with Conor McGregor in the front row. And I was just like, I have a new takeaway for Baylor. Every time I watch Baylor, I find a different takeaway.
Yep.
And now I just feel like they are, and I understand Jeremy Roach is not there, but I'm not even sure Jeremy Roach is better than Rob Wright. Like,
I was gonna say, like, I might be at that point where I'm like, for this season,
1 for 1, I might take Rob Wright here.
Yeah,
but
he's been looking
again,
really good.
Gets to the point that the problem with this Baylor team is, like, their two freshmen are, like, arguably their two best players, and I like Norshad Omier as well. Like, I think he's a very good player. He's probably up there, but like, Edgecombe and Wright have the ball in their hands a ton.
Yeah,
and they're really, really good, but they're freshmen on the road against a BYU team that had a bunch of 24 and 25-year-olds. And obviously Demin and Catchings, and they had good young players too. But, like, you get my point. Edgecombe is awesome. Wright is awesome.
Yeah.
They're relying on them so much right now. I'm just not sure that that's any way sustainable moving forward.
Yeah, I had a couple, like you mentioned. One of my takeaways, honestly, because I've seen BYU a couple times, I think BYU is fun as hell. Like, I love their offense. Of course, Kevin Young. It makes me mad because Kevin Young was, of course, the Suns' top assistant, and like he was like, "I'm not getting the Suns' job, so I'm gonna go coach this awesome college team." And I'm watching this offense. I'm like, "Oh, that'd be cool to watch with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant." But regardless, I think he's BYU. We knew was good last year, but like he's kind of continued that, and they're obviously have some NIL coming in with some big time recruits. So like they're going to be a force in the next couple of years. But regardless, you mentioned the two freshmen. Yeah, like this is a team that we kind of expected to be an experienced team with that perfect flavor and blend of youth, right? We talked to Scott Drew about that, where it was like in today's NCAA, you need experience to win a title, but you also need that extra little bit of it factor. And we thought that VJ Edgecombe provided that. And then we thought that Rob Wright eventually, maybe this year or next year, could provide that as well. It's kind of been, unfortunately, the opposite, where you have these freshmen, and then you kind of have a bunch of underperforming seniors, like outside of Omier, right?
I mean, Omier might be in that underperforming category. I don't want to be too harsh on him, but it's
I'd say for
like when I watch,
in my opinion, what I expected of him this year, this is about it, right? Okay. I'm more looking at, you look at the Jeremy Roaches, who of course is hurt right now.
Yes.
But I look at Jeremy Roach as, you spent so much money bringing him in, right? He's not right now. He's looking at like a distant, like I'm looking at all the veteran guards that they've had. He's a distant fourth in the past 4, right? Like you're looking at Butler, you're looking at Akinjo, and you're looking at
Ray J. Dennis.
He's a distant fourth right now, like a distant fourth. Ray J. Dennis is probably third in that.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was perfect last year, but I thought he was way more serviceable than Roach has been. And I think the ones you can look at, in my opinion, that have been underperforming, and I can't even say he's underperforming because I don't know where this projection came from. Like, Josh Ozarwuna is not a starter. Like, Josh Ozarwuna is not a Big 12 contending top 6 player on a team, like, and so, but there was so much put on his plate, right? He's one of those players where like you just hoped he would, because he ended the year last year very well. I think Jaden Nunn's fine, but I don't think he's a starter, right? Like, I look at these players and I'm like, I see a lot of really good players that could be contributors on a contending team. I don't think that these are starting players, right? I look at Jalen Celestine, fine player.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a starter or a significant contributor on a contending Big 12 team in today's age. Like, you can look at the teams that Baylor did have that were contending, right? The title team or the team that got cut short with all the injuries with LJ Cryer and them. I don't think they're top 7, 8 players on those teams.
Yeah, Celestine, and then you get to obviously the injuries with Roach and Celestine, where it's
Yeah.
like been in and out, in and out. I agree, and that's why again the freshmen have had so much on their plate, and they're so damn good.
I was about to say, and that's that. If you want the silver lining is that, I mean, one of them is going to be gone after this year, but like, you are seeing those players emerge. But then if you're Baylor, this probably just gives you flashbacks to 2 years ago with Keontae George, and you're like, yeah, we kind of saw this,
Edgecombe, no, okay. The question and how I got kind of not wrap this up, but like
Yeah.
big picture for Baylor.
Yeah.
Your hope is that Edgecombe not only takes a step forward for his own, NBA prospects, but it's
Yeah.
like, can he win you a tournament game that you're not supposed to win?
Mhm.
Like, that becomes a question. Like
Yeah.
in the first round, let's say they're I don't know, 7 seed or something. They play a 10 seed, and they're down 4 with 3 minutes left, and then Edgecombe just comes in, hits a 3, gets an and one, like wins you a game in that way. Like, that's kind of the hope right now, because like you said, I don't think Jeremy Roach is that type of game changer.
Right.
I like Omier. I don't love him right now. Just when I watch them, he kind of floats. He's not as assertive as I thought he was earlier in the year. So now it's all right. You have this elite talent. Can VJ Edgecombe and Rob Wright win you a tournament game or two, like single-handedly almost? And that they might be able to.
I was about to say they might, Edge comes up to 38% from 3 in conference play, right? So he's like, and it's like, this isn't, again, I'm not saying he's all of a sudden a plus 38, 38 plus percent 3-point shooter for his career, but like, he is somebody who we saw start slow, but he is somebody who I think needed to be aggressive, and I think took a back seat at times to a Jeremy Roach or something. We saw him over the offseason do this with his national team, right? It was like, that's a guy who needs to know that he kind of is the guy. And I think confidently, especially to get back on the BYU game in particular, they were struggling to keep up with, or one, they were struggling to stop BYU. And so they needed just to get somebody who can get buckets. And it was Rob Wright and it was VJ Edgecombe. A lot of the time was VJ Edgecombe just pulling up from deep 3, right? And it was just like, let me just put this up, and it was working. And again, we can talk about the defense till our faces turn blue, but like, that this just is what this team is now, and you need these freshmen to step up offensively. And against BYU, they did that for the most part. Again, they just kind of got let down by a roster that's not that deep right now. We mentioned the upperclassmen aren't pulling their weight, and we know the defense isn't that good. So like, I came away from this game like obviously frustrated, but not as at this point. That's what this Baylor team is, right? We kind of know it's going to have to be the VJ Edgecombe, now probably Rob Wright show, until at least these upperclassmen get healthy and then have to step up a level themselves.
Yeah, well put. Texas lost to Ole Miss. I don't have anything on it. I don't know if you do.
I didn't really see much on it. I mean, I didn't see this game. I guess the big thing was, first time playing against Chris Beard.
Yeah, that was the
you
whole
know,
angle there. They hung with them, it looked like.
Yeah.
They just weren't able to pull it out at the end. I will say for Texas, they play at Ole Miss tomorrow on Saturday.
At LSU, you mean?
At LSU.
Yeah.
And it is a must-win game for both teams. So
Mm-hmm.
if Texas loses it, then I worry about their just big picture like, outlook here. So they still have I think Texas still has a shot at the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked at like a bracketology recently, but I would think so, because first of all, the SEC is so hard. If you can win a couple of these, you're in it. But they have to beat LSU, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, on the women's side, the AAC race is incredible right now. UTSA is 8-1. North Texas is 8-1. UTSA just lost its first game of the year of conference play to USF on the road without Jordan Jenkins. And so, you put an asterisk there and you say, hopefully Jordan Jenkins is back relatively soon, right? You hope it's not an extended injury. The broadcast never said anything. Like, they didn't even know she was hurt. They were just like,
Yeah.
oh, she's not starting. Then it was like, oh, she's not getting in the game. So I was like,
Just
okay,
kind of like
y'all
letting
don't
it go.
know. Yeah, there's no communication here that she was going to be out. But yeah, USF kind of beat them with their offense. UTSA struggled to stop them consistently. But the interesting thing here is North Texas now plays, I believe, at USF for their next game.
Yep.
North Texas just came back from down 9 to beat in the fourth quarter to beat Temple. Now you go on the road, play at USF. Like, that's kind of a determining game for me.
Yeah.
If North Texas is really going to do this thing. Like,
And I mean, and then they host Tulane right after that. And Tulane's 6-3.
Yeah.
Sorry, they get USF, UTSA, then Tulane. So like it's a good stretch to like really a make or break stretch for them, right? If they go 0-3, which is possible, I wouldn't bet on it, but like it's possible. Or even if they go 1-2, right, that could swing the balance all of a sudden. So I think this is a massive, massive stretch. If they go 3-0, then boom, front seat. You know, you can kind of, again, you don't want to coast, but you know what I mean? Like, they're in the front seat and they can have some weird losses here and there, but it really evens out. Like, if you look at the rest of the schedule, Memphis, Tulsa, East Carolina, Charlotte, UAB, Rice, like it tapers off. This is the 3-game stretch to make or break the season. And then everything else just like, boom. It's either bottom of the conference or like the best team you play is UAB and Rice. So it's like, okay, like you're in a great spot at that point.
Yeah. And USF, like USF seems like they're hitting their stride. Just watching them play, that was like a really impressive game against UTSA.
Yeah, we've been wondering, like, oh, is this what's happening with USF recently? But that was actually a pretty vintage performance from them.
Yeah. So now they play again. They had already lost to North Texas on the road in Denton, and now they get to host them on February 1st. So again, if North Texas sweeps them, they'll be able to clear them, and then you have the big game against UTSA coming up. And I just need to know if Jordan Jenkins is going to play for that game.
It's a massive one. I haven't seen anything on it either. Like, nobody's put anything out. So obviously, if Karen Aston can keep that a secret, she probably isn't going to let anybody know. So
they play at home against Temple. UTSA does, and Temple's not bad. Like, Temple almost just beat North Texas. So if they don't even if they don't have her for that, I mean, that's already a tricky one. And then home against North Texas, we'll see. But this is what we're going to be watching for. Like, the next week is going to be this AAC women's race, because UTSA has Temple to North Texas has USF, and then UTSA. So this is, like you said, it's winning time. It's winning time.
I'm going to try to go to that UNT. What's the next one? The one I just
UTSA North Texas.
No, Tulane. Sorry, the one up.
Tulane.
Just because it'll be off. It'll be after those 2 big games. It'll be the last of that 3. So I'm gonna try to make that one at home.
The last thing on the women's side we got to talk about is a team that is number 1 in their conference, 7-0, number 1 in offensive rating in their conference, number 2 in defensive rating in their conference. None other than the Texas Southern women's basketball team.
We're back, baby. We can talk about the SWAC. We thought we'd have to skip out on this year.
We've been waiting so long for this moment. I'm just waiting.
Men's, women, ignored the SWAC for so long because we were like, yeah, none of these teams are good this year.
Like, we didn't even get one of those like vintage upsets, that we've been waiting for, like on the men's or women's side.
Right. It's been a bad year until now.
I think we had Texas Southern men keep it close with Xavier, and we were like, oh, are they going to do it? And they didn't. Yep. And it was like, okay.
Yeah, I know.
I think the Southern men in Baton Rouge, I know, pulled off an upset. I don't remember who they beat, but they beat somebody. So it's like, that's all I got for the SWAC this year. But Texas Southern women, seemingly out of nowhere, because going into the year, I remember being like, all right, we don't know a ton about this team, a lot of turnover, yada, yada, yada. And then, now to be fair, we did have Texas Southern at, where is this?
I think we had them as respectable. Yeah. We had them as respectable.
Yeah, 10-8. So we knew they'd be decent, but they're 7-0 right now. And like, you look at the wins, they beat Jackson State, they beat Alabama A&M, who's up there, they beat Southern, who's up there, Grambling, who's up there. And so now when you put that together, like I said, they're number one in the conference in 2-point percentage and offensive rating.
Yeah.
They're second in assists. They're number one in blocks.
I was about to say
So
they're kind of beating teams up. They're beating you on the board, they're beating you on the inside,
yeah, it's
and they're
not
just playing
fluky.
defense.
It's not fluky, and
Yeah.
that's where you start with this team. So it's all right. Can they sustain it now? Because you've already taken care of Jackson State. You've beaten
Mm-hmm.
Southern. Southern is 7-1, right behind them. And so that's where now you look at it. They've already taken care of, I think, most of the tougher teams on their schedule. Because now it's Prairie View on February 1st. No disrespect to Houston and Prairie View, but like
Mm-hmm.
this is now we have one of the teams that has separated itself.
Yep.
Texas Southern has, and then it's Pine Bluff and Bethune and Florida A&M, and then it's Southern again. This time on the road on February 13th. So we could be looking at like an 11-0 Texas Southern team going to Southern, coming to Baton Rouge.
And
Come through.
we were kind of waiting for like the player, because there's always like one player on either side, men's or women's, in the HBC, the SWAC scene that kind of steps up. Was like, oh, who's this player doing stuff? And like, it's kind of been two. It's kind of been Alasia Fantroy and then Cortland Loudermilk. Loudermilk is like, their average. I think. Let me see. Fantroy's averaging 14 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1.5 blocks. And then also, I don't want to forget about Treasure Thompson, who's putting up 10 points, 5 blocks, 5 rebounds, and then 2 blocks. And so it's like, okay, like there's not, usually when we've seen this, it's always been like, oh, it's one player averaging 20, right? And all of a sudden, like they're gone the next year or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting about, there was a Prairie View player a couple years ago that did that.
It happened. It happened a few times. I remember one went to, I think it was a Texas Southern player went to, was it Incarnate Word or something? I don't remember. But yeah.
Gerlin Smith, I know, was one of them a couple years ago, and like there was another one I can't remember. But typically, like, it's a one and done. Boom, they're out. They average 20 or 19 or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're gone because obviously somebody's gonna try.
You remember Adriana Event?
Oh my God, yes, dude, yes. Yeah,
Sorry,
she was putting up numbers like, but that's the story with a lot of these teams. A lot of the times, I'm trying to look up Dinah Rosenthal. That was the one with Prairie View,
yeah.
but it's always like one player and then they're gone immediately. And now it's like, okay, there's like, this is actually kind of like a little bit of a committee thing, which credit to Vernette Skeet. Like she's putting together a squad that if they can stay together, we'll see, because I think they are kind of flying under the radar. Like not many people are talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Vernette Skeet for doing this. Like we had them 10-8, 9-9 in conference going into the year, so we understood there were some expectations, but there's also in the SWAC, there is a kind of a pecking order. I feel like, especially with what Jackson State usually is and used to be. And we know that like their fan support's incredible. Like they've put quality product on the floor year after year. So we knew they were going to be tough. And then Southern, I know, is usually tough to beat. So you have like these kind of mainstay programs in the SWAC. And for you to break through and beat both of them in the 7-0 stretch, like you're not just beating up on the bottom of the conference here. You've beaten the other top 2 teams so far. And so now it's, can you just continue it against Prairie View, Pine Bluff, Cookman, and Florida A&M? So that's their next 4. If they go into that game against Southern on the road 11-0, I mean, that's really, really impressive. And like we could be looking at this team as the conference. Like if they go 16-2, 17-1, I mean, this is Vernette Skeet's got to be up there for Coach of the Year at that point.
Yeah, I was about to say, like I said, both these SWAC programs look like they were kind of just like not spiraling. Prairie View's kind of spiraling, but at least like Texas Southern was kind of like in, kind of a plateau, or kind of a, what's the word, kind of neutral. But now it's like, okay, like this is something.
Because it's so hard in these conferences to in any mid-major really, but especially here, it's like you said, you get good players and you lose them, and so it's just hard. But this has been a really impressive season. So I do want to shout out Texas Southern women's for stepping up and letting us talk about SWAC and now real conference title contender here. Anything else here? I mentioned this to you before. Our Lamar women came up short. against Southeastern. This is the game we had been talking about, saying they needed to win it because this is the top two teams, right? They were the top two teams in the Southland, Southeastern, and Lamar. And Lamar ends up losing 60-48. The offense just wasn't able to find its footing. I'm going to look at Lamar's upcoming schedule, but I think they're going to need Southeastern to start slipping up. Southeastern is now 11-0. Lamar is 9-1. Really needed this one. And now there is a big gap. Like Lamar at very worst is going to come in second in the conference, but we understand the expectations for Lamar women's basketball right now. And that is, it's not the conference championship game because you still have the tournament, and we assume those two teams will meet in the championship game there. But for the regular season, it probably was the championship, unfortunately. And so they don't play again, which sucks. I don't know who set this schedule up, but yeah, that was the one. So now you need Southeastern to lose twice, and I'm not sure they do that. I think that's it. Nothing else on the I'm looking through right now. No, Houston women's did not win. No, nothing else. Okay, cool. That's all we got for y'all today. Like I said, it'll be an interesting Saturday, especially a lot of good games on the 1st of February. I mentioned Houston versus Texas Tech men's. I'll be there to see Texas men in person. I already got my flight booked to see Texas women play host LSU in 2 weeks ish. So if you want to get your
that's
come on down to Austin,
blockbuster. Yeah, man.
Meet me in Moody.
Let's go.
So that's all we got. Hope you all enjoyed it. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you have not already, and we will talk to y'all later.